you got those guys along with it just being a position group that over the course of the spring I thought was the position group that improved the most from the start to the finish.
Hello and welcome to Always College Football. Today is June 20th, and we are just about 4 weeks away from the unofficial start of the college football season. Media Days is right around the corner, but we have some great visits between now and then to look forward to, so we appreciate you coming to us from wherever it is that you're coming to us from, whether that's the podcast platform on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, or if you're here with us via the ESPN YouTube channel. Thank you so much for the time today. We have a great show for you today. We have Kalen DeBoer, the head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide, will join the show. We also are going to dive into some news and notes, one involving Les Miles and LSU. Les Miles on the outside looking in to the Hall of Fame right now. Should he be in the Hall of Fame, and should those vacated wins be given back to him? We'll discuss that briefly. We also will talk about a big commitment the Texas Longhorns just landed, and a canceled game in 2025 has opened the door for an HBCU. But before we get to all of that, let's visit with the head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide, Kalen DeBoer. Happy to be joined by head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide, Kalen DeBoer. Kalen, you and I have visited a lot. However, we visited a lot more when you were the head coach of Washington, leading up to the semifinal last year, leading up to the national championship. Now you're the head coach of my alma mater, but also you're the head coach of what I think is the most storied program in the history of the sport. So your impressions from a distance prior to taking the job. When someone said Alabama, what came to mind?
Well, it's always been, what we refer to as a standard, and I know you're biased, of course, and you should be because you've poured a lot into this program and made it to what it is, and made it to a place along with the many other alumni and great coaches that have been here to make it a special place and make it a one that brings in, the championships, but the way it's done, being first class in all those areas, just not just on the field, but off the field. It's what I've always seen from afar. I've always admired just everything about the program and, the recent, 15 to 20 years under Coach Saban there. I've stole a lot of things, it could be the X's and O's of offense or defensive play, or just, kind of those quotes, those sayings, those things that get uploaded to social media all the time that you take from that you can use with your own football team.
Well, I know it's easy for us to kind of reflect back, and you having been a college coach at the same time as Coach Saban, you've watched his program from afar. But I'm curious if you have any earlier experiences having watched an Alabama game, or maybe your first memory of an Alabama game. Because I know you and I had kind of talked in passing, like, this is my dream job. Well, I'm curious why. And I think that you told me an interesting story, but I'd like for the people to hear that story as well.
Well, I'm not sure which one you're referring to, but because there's a few, but I think what I do remember being in high school and Coach Stallings with the championship team there, and in the early 90s, and just, I just remember there was something about that, him being on the sideline, and, that just seemed, being a South Dakota boy, just not having traveled around and definitely been to this part of the country, that just seemed like so far away and so, outrageous to think about Alabama football. And I think, there's obviously been a lot that happened between then and kind of my next really one that pops up in my head. But in 2017, coming here as a coordinator when I was at Fresno State, and, coming over and we were kind of working our way up. It was our first year there. And so we had a lot of things that we were trying to figure out and sort through. But just the environment, the energy, the excitement leading up to the game, of course, the game itself, it was special. You could see it. And so I had a visual in my head of what it felt like as this process was all happening, and the opportunity maybe presenting itself. So I was very excited about that, but not really a lot of experience other than that as far as being on campus or a lot of these connections.
A lot of people have kind of made the comparison though, like, well, he doesn't know the South. Okay, I'm not from the South, and I live in Birmingham. People are pretty nice and hospitable when you get to this part of the country. You are from South Dakota, and I feel like there's a lot more similarities to South Dakota, the part of the world that you're from, and Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And I don't feel like the transition has been that much of a culture shock to you. So, how have you kind of been able to ingratiate yourself to the people of the southern of the South here, and maybe some of the high school coaches that you didn't know beforehand?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think in the end, no matter where you're at when it comes to recruiting, it does come to relationships and just how much are you going to pour into it, and how important it is. And it takes time. It takes time. So, you're starting a little bit behind when it comes to moving here in January and really trying to reestablish. I mean, there's acquaintances, but not on a regular basis, because I was at Eastern Michigan. We recruited in Florida. I was at Bloomington for 10 months. And, there's a lot of visits around the Southeast that you took with guys. In Florida was another area that was recruited heavily. When I was at Southern Illinois, we recruited Tennessee and made some trips down here into Alabama and Mississippi quite a bit. So, even Atlanta. And so, there's times where I understood, the area, but not just one where you're just full-fledged ingrained in it. So I get that when people bring that up, but you're right. I love my home state. I love the area of the country I'm from. This feels as close to any place I've ever lived to being back in South Dakota. And I mean that in the best way. We don't have beaches that you might get on the south side of the state or anything like that. There's a lot of really cool things that are here in Alabama. There's more bigger cities. There's different things that there's not a stadium, obviously, the size of ours or a Division I program at the FBS level. But as far as it just kind of the feel of the people and stuff like that, it really feels like home, and it's made it an easy transition for me. I'm just so appreciative of everyone here, and of course, the excitement revolves around the football team.
It's amazing, and it's not at all surprising that everyone that I've talked to is like, "Hey, I've got a chance to spend a little time with Kalen. He's great." I'm like, "Yeah, he's awesome. Like, you're gonna love him. I just give him time. He'll probably give you his phone number. That's a real possibility." So, thinking about recruiting, that kind of be in front of mine. And you and I were talking before we decided to record a little bit about the recruiting process, and so much about recruiting. I feel like, granted, it's NIL world now. I understand that it's changed, but I want to think that players are still very much invested in the program. I want to think that players are still very much invested in their own development, and few people developed better in this past draft than you did with some of the guys that heard their name called from Washington. So how did that draft class from Washington actually help you now on the recruiting trail moving forward this year?
Yeah, I think a combination of just everything that's always happened here in the program, the development. I know it's tie-in guys that are coming in, but there is a lot of development that happens in the program, and you mix that with showing proof that that's something you can do as well with the guys that were drafted from Washington this year. I think it's just added another level of just kind of a stamp of, hey, this can happen at Alabama, and, the staff I have around me, they've been proven as well. It's made it probably more seamless just because those questions aren't ones that really hang out there for an extended period of time. You just talk about and show people that maybe don't know and aren't aware of who all was drafted in Washington, but it's certainly something that we want to make sure we put out there in front and not brag about, but make sure we highlight.
It's certainly worth bragging about for sure. I want to talk now about the transition from Coach Saban to you, and I think, Coach, and this is, I think, maybe the best attribute that I think you've displayed. It's not easy to step into a spot that is being vacated by arguably the best of all time, in my opinion, the best of all time, in Nick Saban. And basically walking in with all the success that you've had, to have gone 104-12. I don't even know if you know your record. You probably don't. There's just so many dang wins. To walk in, it would be so normal, I think, for somebody to say, hey, that's great the way it was done, but guess what? This is how I do it, and you're going to get in line. This is how we're going to do it, and this is how way I've always done it, and this is what I know works. but you didn't do it that way. You've bridged the gap. You've eased the transition, not just for the players, but I think for the fans and for those that are in the administration. So when you arrived, what was your goal to kind of just make things seamless for the guys and kind of integrate your own stuff? Sure, but keeping in the tradition of how it's been done for the last 17 years.
Yeah. I mean, I think first of all, you just know who you're working with here on this. And I didn't know this for sure, but I had a pretty good feeling that Coach Saban would be a guy that would be comfortable with everything he's had and the success of the program. And so for him, again, this is my words, not his, but I'm pretty confident this is how he feels is, he wants to continue to see the program continue at a high level and all the things that he's poured into it over all these 17 years, being something where the fruits of the labor continue on and it doesn't just fade away. So that being said, I just think that, he has been, I think, just above and beyond great with me, great with everyone around the program. If there's anything we need, we know we're a phone call away from getting him on the line and talking through some things. But he also he's done it in such a respectful way of just trying to allow us to have some space too. And I mean, I keep inviting him and want him to know that door is always open. I think it goes both ways, the respect each way. And I mean, how can you not have that respect for the best college coach in the history of college football? And so that part just right there makes it easy to embrace, what's come before you here. And, I think just the way he's handled it on his end makes it fun too. And I also understand and recognize that our guys here, a lot of them recruited, there's now a few guys we've brought in, but for the most part, these guys were recruited by him. And so, Alabama football, yes, important part of why they chose to come here, but Coach Saban is their head coach. Extremely, extremely big reason why they chose Alabama. So I want that relationship. I think to always exist, and them to feel like, hey, they can pick up the phone and call coach, the coach that recruited them as well. So it's just been really good. It's been smooth, and I took a few lessons and just saw it happen in such a positive way. At a couple previous schools, being at Fresno State with a great coaches like Jeff Tedford, who actually came back now to coach there, amazing, and Pat Hill, who was there, and then at Washington with Chris Peterson, who lived in the Seattle area. Those guys were right there in those cities, and just keeping an open door and having great communication and enjoying the expertise that you have around you, the resources and the people like that. It's just something you got to tap into, especially when you have a question or two or things that you just want to learn. You don't know what you don't know sometimes.
Yeah. I didn't even think about the previous experience you'd have with Coach Pete and with Coach Tedford. I mean, that's phenomenal. And Pat Hill, I mean, that's so cool that you're able to use that experience and kind of apply it to your time here in Tuscaloosa. Looking at the roster, I'm just curious. I mean, when you got here, I know you knew what you inherited at quarterback. You knew what you had at certain other positions. You evaluated everybody, and I would imagine everybody kind of got a clean slate, or as clean as it could get throughout spring. So initial impressions, I guess I'll just kind of open it and leave it very open-ended. Initial impressions when you got into spring practice with what you had and maybe what you needed to go get in order to best position yourself for a great run this fall.
Yeah, I think some of it was dependent on or kind of showed up and just who left when the portal opened up. And the little bit that was kind of before I got here, that transition, even from those few days with Coach Saban retiring to me and getting a chance to be in front of the team. So, the defensive backfield, we brought in a couple of guys here at the end of the spring to help out there. And that's been good. It doesn't mean that you don't feel good about who you have, but you just got to have some numbers at some spots. And there's some good up and coming guys we brought in from other programs that are young and gonna help us. But I think overall, you just saw the athleticism, and now it's just a matter of them feeling comfortable in your system across the board at all positions. I feel, the offensive line has really come together in a special way. With Caden Proctor coming back, and I know for a while there we didn't have Parker Brailsford, but you got those guys, along with it just being a position group that over the course of the spring I thought was the position group that improved the most from the start to the finish. And that's a huge tip of the cap to Coach Cap, our offensive line coach, and those guys for just continuing to work. And so I was proud of that group. I think just across the defensive side of the ball, I think we're just very consistent. Up front, there's a lot of returning production, whether it be at the defensive line or linebacker. We got some veterans there. So now it's just a matter of continuing to, build up the guys that are in behind them. A lot of young faces there in the two deep, but there's a lot of potential that exists too. So getting more and more reps and building up their confidence. And these times that we have right now in the summer, each and every day is important when we get to have those touch points with them. And we still got 20 plus practices left of fall camp and some games, where each and every one's going to matter as far as their growth and potential, reaching their potential.
Only 20 practices now, man. These kids are soft nowadays. I mean, I think we used to have 75 practices in fall camp. It might not have been that many, but it felt that way, right? Something along the lines of that. But looking at your quarterback position in particular, we know that Jalen Milroe had a great year last year, got better as the season went along, no doubt about it. And his best football was played in November for sure. But I think it says a lot about the competition and I guess the depth you have at the position to think of the guys that were willing to stay, understanding that Jalen is the guy going into the fall. So first, if we could just talk about Jalen's progress, and then if we could also talk about the importance of depth at that position, knowing how many backup quarterbacks saw extended periods of time last year.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. So Jalen, with what he did at the end of the season, I think is what's really impressive. And, building on that, even though, yes, new system, new verbiage and things like that, building on that experience, I think, and him now learning from it and knowing, the areas where he just needs to continue to improve. He's been amazing in that way. And I thought he had a great spring, progressively getting better. He's had a great summer to this point. His leadership, his character traits, all those things, you're never going to question those just because it's who he is. And I think, he's putting himself out there more and more with the team. He holds himself accountable to a high level. Therefore, he's able to hold to his teammates. And, he's been that guy. I'm proud of him. He's weathered the storms, with the transition here and just done a great job. But like you said, there's other guys in that room too. Ty Simpson, extremely talented. Along with Dylan Lonergan and Austin Mack, who came from Washington, being a couple years younger than Jalen. Just four guys that I think really believe in our system. They believe in Coach Sheridan, our offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach, not just what we do football wise, but really enjoy being in that room. And they got a pretty tight niche and they support each other, which is really cool to see. And as much as they're competing and wanting to get on the football field, they're just really good human beings. And Coach Sheridan's done an awesome job at just, helping them all feel like that development, feeling that value to our team is continuing to go up and that their time can be there at some point as well. So, Jalen's, I watched the SEC championship a number of times and just some things that you really see that were happening at the end of the year. And, it gives you really a lot of excitement and hope, going into the fall.
A couple more questions, Coach, before we get you out of here. I know you're super busy, and we're so grateful for your time today to just kind of discuss the state of the program and where you're at. I do want to kind of reflect back one more time before we get into the, welcome to Alabama moment. But if we could go back to your time when you were at Sioux Falls and you were telling us a great story about how you and Grubb would put together the plan, and then you'd have to put together the directions to Omaha and set up the walkthrough and all that stuff. So if you could just take us back to NAIA football and what was your responsibility as the head coach and your staff to get your team ready to play, and obviously to play at a ridiculously high level en route to the many national championships that y'all won?
The last couple of years, we moved from 3 full-time coaches to 4 on the staff. Some of them had other jobs. They were teachers on campus. Sometimes they were, part of the admissions staff. There were, Grubb in particular, you brought him up. He was the head of the equipment. And so he had some student help, but he had to make sure the jerseys were washed and things like that. I remember my first job when I took over as offensive coordinator in 2000. We were building lockers for the guys that summer.
The staff was
building lockers. So just a lot of hats that you wear, and I think things have certainly improved there because of the success, and it's a great place, and they're at a Division II level and having a lot of success there. And I'm proud of that program growing, but you wore a lot of hats, and the big pregame meals and things like that were different. It might be on a bus and pulling at a park on the side of the road, and just pulling out the boxes and eating some sandwiches, and it was simple as that. And I think what it really shows you is 2 things. Number one, how important the people that you have on your staff here are, and all those roles, and having an appreciation for them, which I do, and they do it on obviously a much higher level than I could ever imagine. And I think it also just really tells you, if you keep it simple sometimes, and you just, focus on the main things, and you prioritize what's really important. And that's a lot of times the relationships and just the personal touch and the journey and the moments you're in, having that perspective, I think is really the key to any team as you build it. We're all human, right? And it's those things, it's those memories that are part of the journey that are really special. And so we focus on those a lot. Yes, we got to win football games, but I think that's all a part of it in some form or fashion.
Yeah, amazing. Well, fast forward now to a place where you had to you were the resources individually alongside just a few other coaches, to a place where you have endless resources and endless support and an unquenchable thirst for greatness. What was the moment that kind of stands out above all else where you say, oh my goodness, I am the head coach at Alabama?
I think when we landed, and there's thousands of people, or at least felt like that are there to greet you. And as we pulled from the hotel from the airport to the complex, just pretty much everyone knowing that you're in town, and what was happening. And so that's I think really was the one that stands out. And then I think the spring game, was another one of those moments. But, each and every day that we're here, you just run into so many people that just have so much passion for this program. And those were the magnitudes, 72,000 at the stadium and the people at the airport. But each and every day you just run into people that will do whatever they can to help out, and they make it known. And honestly, I really truly believe that that's what they'll do. If you asked them, they would do whatever they could to help you out. And that's what this place is all about. It's passion, and it's people who love this program.
Well, terrific stuff, Coach. We're so happy for you. We're so grateful for the time today. We look forward to seeing you hopefully throughout fall camp, and know that you're going to have a great rest of the summer, and just hope you get to enjoy your family and the little bit of time off that you have before fall camp gets going, my friend.
Yeah, it's great to see you again, as always, and appreciate you so much. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide. Moving into some news and notes now, Les Miles is officially suing LSU. LSU opted to vacate wins, 37 wins to be exact, from Les Miles, which now drops him below the 60% threshold that would be required to get into the Hall of Fame. A couple things here. One, I've always thought that taking away wins was dumb. Personal opinion, I remember Les Miles winning those 37 games, so I've never felt like it really mattered that much. Like when you take away wins, it just, to me, doesn't mean a whole lot. I mean, I still remember those games. I still remember the outcomes. And you can't tell me that those games didn't happen because those wins are no longer listed historically. But in this particular case, it's kind of interesting. I never thought about the Hall of Fame I never thought about how vacating wins would potentially impact somebody who would be in the Hall of Fame. But in this particular case, having played against Les Miles and having played against the teams that he was coaching against, I have a tremendous amount of respect for the amount of intensity that his teams played with. He obviously did a great job recruiting, did a great job of making sure his teams were physical and tough and not a team that you ever wanted to play against. But when I think about like the best of all time, when I think Hall of Fame, I think best of all time. Personal opinion. Best coaches of all time. And I've never thought of Les Miles as one of the best of all time. Personal opinion. I know indicate records and things like that would indicate otherwise. But I personally believe when we think about the Hall of Fame, why is the threshold 60% for a Hall of Fame coach? Shouldn't it be like 75%? Or 80% perhaps? I don't know. What's a going rate for a Hall of Fame coach, like an all-time great? Okay, winning a national championship, that would have you in the mix. But is really the threshold just 60%? That to me seems outrageously low. So I would maybe advise the Hall of Fame to increase that threshold, because I don't want just every run-of-the-mill coach that went 7-5. I mean, you go 7-5 your whole career, you're on the fringe of Hall of Fame status. That to me is not good enough. I know you got to win X amount of games too, 100 wins or whatever it is, but goodness gracious, I mean, the guy was the head coach at LSU. I mean, that's a pretty good place to coach, pretty good place to win games. Now, I don't feel like asking for 60% or better is that significant of an ask. So that is an interesting story. The other story, Dia Bell, who is the number 9 prospect in the ESPN 300 for 2026, is officially committed to Texas. He is the son of Raja Bell. He is from Florida's American Heritage High School, and he actually chose Texas over a bunch of different schools. Now, what's interesting is that knowing that his dad played in the NBA, it's really cool that he chose football first and foremost. And I got to watch a little bit of tape, albeit granted highlights, which are hard to evaluate players. Let's just be real. If you're watching highlight reel plays, it's just hard. Anybody could look great in a highlight reel, but it does look like this kid has a live arm. And knowing that he has a professional sports background within his family, you know he's probably going to approach it the right way. So I'm going to be very interested to see how this all works out. And Texas, too. Texas, granted, is the number 2 quarterback for this upcoming year. Texas, with how Sark has developed Quinn Ewers and how Quinn Ewers has improved drastically from year 1 to year 2, and now hopefully from year 2 to year 3, and to now see what could happen with Arch Manning in the future. How does Arch Manning continue to progress? And when he takes over for Quinn Ewers, how will he look and how comfortable will he look? But Sark has a long track record of developing quarterbacks at a high level. So I would think that this is yet another in a long line of guys that will be flocking to Austin to make sure that they get coached by one of the best quarterback coaches in the country in Steve Sarkisian. And then finally, Ohio State and UConn decided to cancel their 2025 game, which opened the door for Grambling State. So super cool to see Grambling State going to the Horseshoe in 2025. That's a great opportunity for them. And I'm glad to see this materialize now that UConn and Ohio State have decided to part ways in that matchup a year from now. So that'll do it for us here at Always College Football. Continue to ask all of you to like, rate, and subscribe to the show wherever you get your show, and really appreciate those of you that have shared the show with your friends. We've also appreciated all of you that have followed us on social media on Always CFB, both Instagram and on Twitter. You can interact with the show there anytime as well. So for all of us here at Always College Football, for Mark, Jake, Jack, the other Jack Griffin, I'm Greg. We hope you have an amazing day, and remember, it's always college football. Hey guys, it's Greg McElroy. Thanks for watching Always College Football. Make sure you like, rate, and subscribe to ESPN's YouTube channel and wherever you listen to your podcasts.